So, hi everyone. My name is Mshai Mary, and I'm based in Nairobi. I've worked in development work for the past 8 years, specifically on issues of girls and women rights. And I'm happy to be here and to be moderating this panel. I think I'll give us an opportunity to introduce ourselves briefly before we can begin, and then we can start. So, Rebecca, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So I am Rebecca Fairweather. I am an 18-year-old Latina activist from Queens, New York. I am currently involved in the NEXTGEN for the female quotient. I have also been a leader for Girl Up, and I am currently the founder and the CEO of Buzzcut Post. I'm super excited to be here, and if you're in the United States, please go vote.
Hi, great. Over to you, Fasika.
Hi, my name is Fasika. I'm a junior at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I'm also on the NEXTGEN advisory board for the female quotient with Rebecca, and I also was a teen advisor for Girl Up, which is a campaign or an initiative from the United Nations Foundation. And I'm currently studying international affairs, hoping to work in international development within Africa.
Great. Oh, okay. Interesting conversation where we'll definitely start with you. Over to you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for having me and all of us here. My name is Anna Blue. I am the Chief NEXTGEN Officer with the Female Quotient and have had the honor and privilege of working with these two young women for a number of years. I formerly led Girl Up with my partner over there, Melissa, and then moved over to Female Quotient just earlier this year, where I lead all of our NEXTGEN initiatives to advance equality in the workplace.
Okay, I guess that's a good way to start us off. Maybe you can tell us a bit about NEXTGEN and what it's all about. Any of you can go, just briefly.
But I can kick it off, and of course, you guys can add to it. So our NEXTGEN work, primarily, when we have the equality conversation about gender and the workplace, we very much look at why aren't there enough women leaders? Why aren't there enough women in the C-suite or women board members? So it's really important for Female Quotient to have really started to look at the pipeline and parity all the way through, from the recruiting process for how young women enter the workforce and the workplace, and what that journey is like on their path to leadership, what opportunities, what roadblocks, what challenges, and how we can be supportive in not only shattering those glass ceilings and those barriers for these young women, but really working with them to make sure that there are no more ceilings, that it's just a path as we all move forward. And I have the privilege of working with these young women who are part of our board. We, very similarly to my work at Girl Up, I am not a part of NEXTGEN. I'm not a part of Gen Z, so I don't know. And when you don't know, you ask. That's why we have a board of really powerful, tremendous, amazing young women who help guide our work as we move forward. And that's what Fasika and Rebecca are a part of.
Okay, and maybe they can tell us how they got involved with the work so that we can then proceed to start talking about voice and agency in terms of and the impact it has. So, Rebecca?
I first got involved in the advocacy space in high school. I just joined a Girl Up club, and I, was exposed to this whole world of, intersectionality and equality. And I really fell in love with the work and realized that it is such a safe space and such a community. So I decided that I was just going to continue doing the work. And I was first exposed to Female Quotient about 2 years ago because of Girl Up. And I really love the work that they were doing. And it's a much more mature, I guess, space in a sense where it's like you're moving on to college. It's not a high school thing anymore. It's a like getting your life together. So I was given the opportunity to join the NEXTGEN board, and I took it right away because I knew that, while I'm still fresh into college, that The work is important, and it doesn't matter how old you are. As long as you can provide some educational value to other people and you can learn, any opportunity that is given is necessary and needed.
Okay. Fasika?
So similar to Rebecca, I kind of got introduced to this whole world of advocacy and girls and women's rights through Girl Up when I was in high school. And I started a club at my own school. And I don't know, it was something about Girl Up that was just kind of built for young girls that kind of attracted me to it because it gave me all the steps on how to start my own club, how to hold a fundraiser, how to kind of advocate for a cause, which I never really knew how to do. It was always like something I was interested in. But I don't know, like when I was 16, which is when I first got introduced to Girl Up, I didn't really know anything about advocacy. And then it kind of just changed my whole view on everything. It inspired me to pursue that line of work. It inspired me to look at other organizations that had the same mission. And it also inspired me to study international affairs and kind of look more into the world of development because it really taught me that, you know, all of these problems that happen, like we can make a difference, like we can change it. Like it's not something we have to sit with. And I think that just kind of changed everything for me. And now being a part of Female Quotient, it's a little bit different than Girl Up because Girl Up again was like built for adolescent girls, and Female Quotient is kind of built for like Rebecca was saying, like the next generation, like next gen. That's why we have the advisory board. Also, like women in business or just networking with other women. And it's kind of exposed me to a whole other world that I didn't know. For me, it's like kind of just continuously being exposed to things I was never aware about, and then kind of learning more about it. And then, so yeah. Was there another part to the question? I feel like I kind of rambled.
No. I think you did quite a good job just explaining how you got involved, and it gives us a good foundation on the questions we're going to have of where we stand and what we feel what you feel as panelists is the status of where girls are now with regards to voice and agency in realizing an inclusive future. So where are we now and where do we ought to be? And probably just to tie it all, what stands in our way so that that limits us from getting to where we should be. So I think that would be our first question. So Fasika, do you want to start us off?
Can you repeat the part of the question? I kind of heard. Wait, which?
Oh, okay. So where we feel we are currently as the status of girls in the world with regards to voice and agency and realizing an inclusive future. And then maybe Anna can take us on where we ought to be. And then maybe Rebecca can just highlight on some of the challenges that we face that makes us not get to where we ought to be.
Well, I feel a lot of where we are right now is we're learning. We're kind of learning that recognizing the problems that we've always seen, kind of similar to like what I was just saying of like the sense of being aware of something, but then really knowing about it, understanding it, and then taking action against it is where I think we kind of are and like going towards because a lot of what I see in like my generation, I think I'm Gen Z, and also in millennials is like this new trend of advocacy and being socially conscious and working for causes and I don't know, more of a taking action thing. It's very popular. It's this thing that it's kind of like a new movement of where we are, and I think kind of on where we ought to be is we ought to be in a place where all of these changes are made and all of these causes kind of come into fruition. Like all of the things that we're working for should be accomplished. I feel like that is the end goal of where we ought to be. And when it comes for like girls and women, where we ought to be is we need to be in a place where it's just complete we're all equal in every part of the world, which is which is kind of great about this summit, is that it is a little bit international, and where we ought to be is a place where each country, all girls everywhere, like across the globe, are given rights and the ability, I don't know, just a voice in a lot of ways too, and to be seen. It sounds kind of simple, but it's also like such a huge deal, and it's so different in so many different places that it's kind of hard to kind of label it all. But yeah, I think that's where we ought to be.
Okay. So Anna, Rebecca, do you have anything you? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add, you know, I think that I agree, Pacifica, with everything you said. And, you know, talking about the international, it's so easy for us when we talk about equality for girls and women to just think about our own. I mean, as women, as we think about the odds that we've already faced, how they're stacked against us as we move forward. And then we think more broadly, right? Like we think about our community, we think about sort of what's happening here. And what, you know, what we've been saying for a really long time through this work, through Girl Up and as a female quotient, no girl or woman is equal until all girls and women are equal. And it's really important for us to understand the challenges that young women are facing all over the world, and that wherever we are, that's only a piece of sort of our own microcosm of that. You have human trafficking is a problem that is continuing to increase. The statistics around human trafficking are madness. I mean, when you look at what that data, I think it's every 4 seconds a girl is trafficked. That's huge, right? So when you think about when we think about sex servitude, when we think about sexual assault, when we think about lack of access to education, you know, we hear the big numbers around girls who are not in school currently, but it's more than 18 million girls that will literally never see an education, not one day in a classroom in their entire lives. So we have so much work to do that, you know, we can take these kind of little wins as we go, and certainly with bigger access to information, we can do more because we can know more. But to me, that's what's really exciting about working with NEXTGEN, right? We have these young women who have had access to technology since they can remember. They have access to information 24 hours a day. They know what's going on in the world in a way that I couldn't have any knowledge of. It was a very small slice of the news or the newspaper that I could read. And now we have young women who, one, have not access to the information, but two, they have access to their own power. That's another thing I didn't know when I was a young person. I didn't know. I thought power was something you achieve when you get older. And now I see these young women, 14, 15, 16, you know, 19, 20, who have known that they are powerful from a very young age. They know that they have the information, and they're using their voice and their power, their advocacy and their activism to do something about these challenges. And that's, if there is a glimmer of hope in any of the equality conversation, that is really it.
Great. I think just to the way you're talking about the spaces, I think with what Fasika mentioned, this being an international conference, then we are unlocking some of these spaces to have these conversations, to just push our wins a little bit further. That's great. Thanks, Anna. Rebecca, do you want to say something about the challenges? Just any to add to the conversation?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, as I was sitting here and listening to Fasika and Anna talk, one, I completely agree with everything that they have stated, but also it's so difficult to pinpoint what the challenge is as to why we haven't received gender equality and equity. There are so many things like internalized misogyny and just misogyny in general, and capitalism and money, and all these different factors that sort of go into why we haven't reached this state of equality, as well as global politics. And I think that the important thing to recognize is that equality looks starkly different dependent on where you are coming from. And so does feminism, and so does, you know, all these different things. And we have to acknowledge that, you know, just because we live in the United States, at least for me personally, like, feminism doesn't look the same in Latin America. Feminism doesn't look the same in Africa. And just sort of stepping out of your own privilege and acknowledging that there are different types of equality. And I think we've seen now with many microaggressions of misogyny that you may not have even realized is misogyny, such as, you know, the pay gap. It's such a small margin, but like asking your coworker, your boss, saying, how much do you make? It puts you in a very uncomfortable space, but you know, you start to realize there are a lot of tiny things that are considered misogyny and inequality, but also acknowledging that there are major things happening, like the sterilization of women on the border. And, you know, we've seen so many times that there are major things that are happening and we haven't done anything to acknowledge them. And I personally don't know why, because we've seen that educating girls in communities and, you know, providing girls with power uplifts the entire community, and it raises stocks, it raises the value of a country. So there is no downside to providing everybody with an education and providing equality in a country. So I really don't know why we haven't gotten to that space. But I hope that we get there soon, especially with Gen Z, you know, coming into the voting age, and with the power of social media, and it's getting more powerful, we've been able to see inequalities that are happening not only in our own backyard, but, you know, across the world. So just using that power and using social media to continue to highlight what you might not see on the news. And as we're getting to that age, you know, taking up spaces in power, either in the House of Representatives or in, you know, different power levels in different countries. I'm excited for the next 20 years or so.
Oh, okay. We are all excited. I think we are all working towards it in our little spheres of influence, just trying to make sure that we make it better for the people who are coming behind us. And I think so far, NEXTGEN sounds like it's doing such an amazing job. And I guess what I wanted to ask was, like, what are some of the initiatives which you're involved in, and how do you see them translate as bringing about a more inclusive future? So if you could give us a few examples of the kind of campaigns or the work or the advocacies which you're involved in, so that we can relate to how practical they can get. Anyone can go.
I can speak on that one.
Yeah.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah, specifically like through the female quotient, like serving on the NEXTGEN board, I've had like the opportunity. We all have to serve in committees. So one of the committees that I had the opportunity of joining was the Sustainable Fashion Committee. And honestly, just by being in the committee, I've learned so much about sustainable fashion and how terrible like the fashion industry is for the environment, but also like the potential for it to get better. Which was the greatest thing about the idea of sustainable fashion and getting involved in that, is like the idea of working towards like having fashion and being like kind to the earth at the same time. And that is like one example of advocacy that I've just been involved with through the female quotient and being on the NEXTGEN board. And it does make me really hopeful for the future as well. Some of the initiatives that we discussed, like through the committee, was like ways for people who don't really know that much about sustainable fashion to kind of get involved with it, such as like simple tricks that you can implement in your life, like thrifting or reusing clothes, or kind of just checking the quality of your clothes before you purchase it in the first place. So yeah, being involved in that has just taught me a bunch of little things that you can kind of implement in your own life to make a difference. So like kind of a way for anyone to get involved.
Thank you, Jessica. Rebecca, you look like you want to say something.
You did.
I mean, I'm just reading from the screen. Just teaching to say something, so go ahead.
I mean, I've definitely been involved in different initiatives focused on specific issues such as education and with the female quotient, the pay gap. But also, like Vasika, within female quotient, I've been focusing with voting and voter suppression. And it's been not only very educational to sort of be in a space with people who come from different backgrounds and seeing how their voices have been suppressed, but also
Okay.
throughout college, just, I realized how educational college is. It's a lot of work, but it's so educational, especially as the election is upcoming. We're talking about voter suppression in different countries and how it connects to everything else. And it's been very fascinating to learn, but we've also seen that it affects women predominantly, and that women of color are predominantly suppressed in the polls. And it's shocking to me, because if you look at every large movement, women of color are always the first people there. They are always the organizers. They are the ralliers. They are the marchers. They are there. They are proud to be there, and that they are given this, sort of discrimination to not be able to show up to the polls and vote for somebody who looks like them. It's been saddening, but it's also inspired me and fueled me to say, okay, we're going to go to the polls and ensure that things like that don't happen, and continue to advocate and continue to talk about other elections as well. I know this one is like massive right now globally, but we haven't been paying attention to Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, and I think paying attention to global elections and seeing that voter suppression is very prominent over there, and that elections are vastly different than they are here, and just continuing to shed a light on what's happening there and how we can help as a global entity.
Oh, fantastic. And I think you've brought out a very good point about the role of movements and just collective action to address some of these global issues. And we've seen work from young activists like Malala and Greta, just doing very good work. I think maybe Anna, can you tell
know if
us
it's
a bit
just me having connection issues, but I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, I love everything you guys are involved in. Rebecca, I've been learning a lot about voter suppression as well, and doing some work with some youth groups here. I think for me, it's really interesting. My work, especially over the last decade, has kind of been very globally focused. I've learned so much through all of the work that I've done around equality, just about the issues that girls and women face everywhere, what equality, as you were saying, Rebecca, what it looks like in other places, what those challenges are, what the different access points are. And what it's done is I think I sort of stopped paying attention to the local piece. I stopped really just paying attention to what was happening, not only in my state, but in my own community. And did I know who the people were that were going to be on the ballot from a local level, and just how much learning, how much influence that has. And so I've kind of gone the opposite, I think, the direction that most people go, where they sort of start here and go big. I've went big and now I've turned local. So for me, it's really been getting involved in my community. It's, I sit on a number of boards in education, especially urban education, has always been a passion of mine, both at the local, national, and global level, sort of how we can break those barriers, because that oftentimes is where they start. But really wanting to understand my own community, understand the issues and the challenges that we have within it, understand where the racial, discrimination lies, where the racism is, where the barriers to young women and the sexism is, and, the misogyny, as you guys mentioned, and all of that stuff, and really kind of work on the community that I live in. And I think that's so important for people. And today, when we have access to all of this information that can kind of take us to all these other parts of the world, if you're here in the United States, there's a huge uprising happening in Philadelphia right now, and then we had Minnesota, and, you have all of these things, and it's so easy to jump around. And then, you talk about, then you add global onto that, and what are the elections going on in other places, and the injustices, and we want to fight everything. And then you have climate change, which is the whole world, literally. And so I think for me, it's really been acknowledging how much I need to understand where I live and the direct impact every day that I can have in our communities. And I would encourage other people to do that too, wherever you are in the world, is to really understand your communities, understand the decision makers at all levels starting from the smallest decisions up to the big ones, because that's where advocacy is so important. It's really hard to tackle national issues as one person, or even as a small community of people, but it's way easier to tackle those individual issues in your starting local, and then use that to create momentum, to create much larger change. And that's been a huge lesson for me, with all of the issues that I care about, is to turn that a little bit more locally.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anna.
I don't know if we lost Mashai.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I don't see you anymore, but I can.
Okay. Oh, all right. I don't know. Maybe it's just a connection issue. I'm just looking at the time, and I think we have slightly like about 5 minutes left just to wind down. Sad. I think we can stay here for like an hour just talking about our different experiences and how to make it make our worlds and our spaces a little bit better. But maybe as a parting shot, we could each just highlight how we feel we can enhance our voice. Sorry, Anna really can't hear me. Rebecca, Fasika, can you hear me?
I can repeat the question for her. Can you say it again?
Yes, go ahead. Well, for me, it's just as a way of winding down how we feel the spaces which we are in, we will actually make a difference in amplifying voices, not just for us, but also other girls, like globally. So how do we also use that space?
So essentially, like, how do we use that space to kind of help the movement?
Amplify, yes.
Amplify. Okay.
Yes.
So we're talking about like our own spaces, right?
Yeah. Oh no. I think all together. Oh no. So I mean, we can still continue just to finalize it, because we really like have like 5 more minutes. But yeah, how you can use this to... Hi Anna. Can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, I can. I just refreshed it, so it kicked me out and let me back in, but now I can see you too.
Okay, fantastic. I was feeling a little bit, what do you call it? Like, like I needed to get under the...
It like disappeared, and I'm like, they're nodding and saying, so somebody's saying something. You gotta love technology. It's connected us all, and at the same time, it's crazy. So keep going. I apologize for...
Yes, and I think sometimes when you don't get these hitches, you have to start wondering, are you really doing everything right? So they sort of validate your the normalcy of everything, how things can go haywire. Anyway, so before we are kicked out of the whole main stage, I was just asking for parting shots in terms of how we intend to move the work forward in our spaces as we go forward, like post the summit, taking what we've learned, what we've understood from the different people and the works that are going on in the world, how we can amplify girls' voices in the next gen under female content, how we can just ensure that we are all working towards a common goal, which is just building this inclusive future for girls. Yeah, so any one of you can go first, and then yeah, hopefully we'll all have a bit of time to talk about it.
I could go ahead and answer this question, but like what I would say as a way to kind of take action in your own spaces is, well, honestly, that's just what I would say. I would say take action, like really take action in any way that you can. And any little thing that you can do in your circumstances, just kind of like look at your own life and see what kind of change you can make, or a little action that you can do. It can be posting on social media, it could be volunteering, It should definitely be to vote, kind of echoing what Rebecca was saying. Definitely vote. That's to definitely be one of the things in any election, all of your elections around the world. If you're of legal age, definitely vote. If you're in the United States, definitely vote. But I think a lot of what people can do is just really kind of educating themselves and then taking action in the way they see fit. And a lot of times, if you educate yourself or like look into like movements or organizations, nonprofits that you admire, they will probably have some steps for you to take in order to take action, which is like really what happened with me with Girl Up. Is like I had an interest and Girl Up had a path. Like they had a way for me to express that interest, and I just kind of want to echo that. I believe that that's possible for everyone. It might not look the same for everybody, but I definitely do think it's possible for everyone.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Rebecca?
Yeah, I completely agree with this. And just to continue, definitely putting yourself in those uncomfortable spaces where you may not necessarily have any stories, but you are learning from other people, and you're sort of empathizing with other people. And you know, having these tough conversations, either if it's with your family or just with people you don't know, will not only be so beneficial to you, but it'll be beneficial to the other person. And just, you know, having a no judgment zone, and trying to be nice, because I know sometimes you will get people in your DMs and they'll be mean, but I think coming down to level with them and really have a conversation brings a new perspective to people. And like we said earlier, have said multiple times, please go out and vote, not just for, you know, the election that's happening in the United States, but for everywhere. We have to ensure that we're voting in people who look like us and who believe what we believe. And I think that elections are so important. And if you notice, you know, voter suppression, or you notice that something fishy is happening, know that you have power, especially with social media now. Highlighting what's happening in your own country, in your own community, will definitely be beneficial, and you will get the community support that you need. So know that you're not alone, and you have so much power.
Amazing. Anna?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jessica completely. You know, I will add to that, social media is amazing because it gives every single person a global platform, right? But it has limitations. And I think we get stuck in I posted on social media, so I've done my part. I've educated someone. I've moved that information. So right after you use social media, ask yourself what you would do on this issue or this moment if you didn't have social media, right? What would you do to engage in meaningful dialogue? What would you do to get out into your community, to meet with other people, to advocate to decision makers, to, you know, build community in person? And I know it's hard because we also have a global pandemic happening, but what are all of the ways that we can move the needle forward on any issue that we care about, especially for equity for girls and women, outside of just social media? I'm not saying don't use social media. It is an important platform, but there has to be more. There has to be more to everybody's activism than just using that platform. So what is that next step? And you know, I've really been fortunate to be around so many young women who have created these clubs, and they've created their own movements in their communities. They've shown up to things, they've put on events, they've really built communities in order to move the needle forward. For us, you know, here in the US, all of our decisions at the top level are made on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And it's really great to see one girl show up to meet with her representative, but when you see 150 show up, it's a whole different thing. So really that in-person piece, understanding who your decision makers are wherever you are in the world, who are the ones that you can get to, that you can have a conversation with, and who can you bring with you? How do you build that community to move forward and get out there and meet with people in person? So every time you post, and certainly post, ask yourself, now what would I do if I couldn't post? How would I have a voice in this process if I couldn't use social media? And do that. Whatever that is that comes to your mind, do that too. So that way things really are moving forward and we're not just using that one mechanism.
And I think it's such a wonderful point to end with, because then it also allows the people who don't have access to the social media, or because we work with people who are in the grassroots, in the rural areas, and they can also be part of that that changing will. They can move with the wave. And I think that's really, really a good point, Anna. So thank you very much. It's just been a lovely time discussing and just learning from your experiences and what's going on at NextGen. I really have had a nice time, and I hope also the audience we've learned a few things from one another, and I look forward to having more of these conversations. So hopefully there'll be another Girl Summit, or Ananke will provide a different platform whereby we could also continue this discussion. So thank you very much.